All right, let's talk about America's 11th president, James K. Polk. Now, his name might not ring a bell quite like Washington or Lincoln, but you need to know about him. Because in just one single 4-year term, this guy ran his presidency like a to-do list and literally changed the shape of the United States forever.
I mean, just think about that for a second. This wasn't about passing a few laws here and there. Polk's ambition was massive, on a continental scale, and he was absolutely laser-focused on getting it done. This is the story of one of the most stunningly effective and, yeah, controversial presidencies in all of American history. So, Polk was a Democrat from Tennessee. And, get this, he wasn't even supposed to be his party's nominee. He was what they call a dark horse candidate. A total surprise. But here's the kicker. Unlike a lot of politicians, he didn't just want to win the job. He showed up to the White House with this incredibly clear 4-point master plan that would guide his every single move.
Okay, so what was actually on this legendary to-do list? Let's break down the 4 big goals that Polk promised he would achieve, all within a single term. And there it is. You've got 2 goals about the economy and 2 goals about, well, massive territorial expansion. This wasn't just some random wish list. This was the core agenda for his party at the time. He was so sure he could pull it all off that he promised he wouldn't even run for a second term. Talk about a bold, all-or-nothing gamble. Let's start with his 2 biggest, most audacious goals first. You have to understand, Polk was a true believer in this idea of manifest destiny, this popular belief that America was basically destined, even by God, to stretch all the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. First up on the list, the Oregon Territory. Now, this wasn't just empty land waiting to be claimed. Both the United States and Great Britain were occupying it together, and let's just say things were getting pretty tense. The expansionists in America were all fired up and ready for a fight. The public mood was aggressive. The slogan people were shouting was 54-40 or fight, basically demanding all of Oregon way up into what is now Canada. But Polk, he was a pragmatist. Instead of risking a war with the mighty British Empire, he did something smart. He negotiated. They agreed to a peaceful compromise, splitting the territory right at the 49th parallel, which is the border we still have today. And don't let that word compromise fool you. The chunk of land he got in that deal was immense. It eventually became all or part of 5 future U.S. states. Just a staggering addition to the country. And with that, check. The 3rd item on his list was done. Okay, so with Oregon settled, Polk turned his eyes south, towards the huge territories of California and the Southwest. All of that land belonged to Mexico, and this next item on his checklist, well, it wasn't going to be settled with a peaceful treaty. Tensions with Mexico exploded over border dispute in Texas, and Polk used that conflict as a catalyst. This led directly to the Mexican-American War. Now, it was a very controversial war from day one, but for the U.S. military, it was a swift and decisive victory. After just 2 years of fighting, the Treaty of Guadalupe-Hidalgo was signed. And what did that mean for Polk's checklist? An absolutely stunning win. The treaty forced Mexico to give up a massive amount of land, territory that would eventually become all or part of 7 future states. I mean, just look at this list. California, Nevada, Utah. We're talking about pretty much the entire American Southwest as we know it today. This just goes to show you Polk's relentless focus. He had now checked off his 4th and final goal, completely redrawing the nation's map in just a couple of years. But Polk wasn't done yet. Remember, his to-do list wasn't just about grabbing land. It was also about the economy. So he turned that same methodical, intense focus to the nation's finances. First, he brought back the independent treasury. For his party, this was a huge deal. It basically meant separating the government's money from private banks. The whole idea was to reduce the power of big financiers and stabilize the economy after some pretty rocky years. So, boom. Item number 1 on the list, done. And finally, the last item. Polk pushed through something called the Walker Tariff, which dramatically cut taxes on imported goods. This was a huge win for his supporters in the farming regions of the South and West because it made goods cheaper and was designed to boost trade for their crops. And just like that, the checklist was complete. 4 promises made, 4 promises kept, all in a single term. I mean, by any standard, that's an incredible success. But here's the thing. Every single item he checked off that list came with a cost. So what was the real price for Polk's perfect record?
The Mexican-American War split the country right down the middle. On one side, you had people who celebrated it as part of America's manifest destiny. But on the other side, especially in the North, many people saw it as an unjust, aggressive war, provoked for one simple reason: to grab new land where slavery could expand. And that right there is the heart of the problem. Polk's greatest success, adding all of this new land, unleashed a political firestorm that the country just could not put out. This was the question, the one question that would absolutely dominate American politics for the next decade. Every single square mile of land taken from Mexico just reopened this painful, bitter national wound over slavery, pushing the North and the South further and further apart. So, how do we look back on the checklist president? Was he one of the most effective leaders in American history? Or was his incredible, single-minded ambition just plain reckless?
On the one hand, you really can't argue with the results. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. He expanded the nation to the Pacific Ocean, he strengthened the presidency by showing what a clear agenda could do, and his economic policies were credited with helping the economy grow.
But on the other hand, those achievements came at a terrible price. His expansionist dream dramatically cranked up the tension over slavery. The war cost thousands of lives and was seen by many as an act of aggression. Basically, his greatest successes poured gasoline on the fire that was already burning between the North and South. And that relentless drive, it took a serious personal toll. True to his word, he didn't run for re-election. He had finished his list and was completely exhausted. The stress of the presidency was so great that he died just 103 days after leaving office, the shortest retirement of any president in U.S. history. James K. Polk is such a fascinating case study in what it means to be an effective leader. He set clear goals, and he accomplished every single one of them. But it forces us to ask a really tough question. What's the true measure of success? Is it just about checking all the boxes? Because Polk won his battles, but in doing so, he just may have set the nation on an unavoidable path toward its greatest failure, the Civil War.